Today's story is about a guy who showed up to Thanksgiving carrying a homemade pumpkin pie and 2 bottles of seltzer, and walked out with something nobody at that table expected him to have. For 5 years, Nate was the quiet engine keeping his entire family from going under. Mortgages, car repairs, emergency rent, dental work, a luxury SUV lease he didn't even know he was funding. $72,000, give or take whatever he never got around to writing down. And when his mom looked him in the eye in front of 40 people and told him to pay up or get out, he didn't argue. He didn't beg. He went home, pulled out his files, and showed up the next morning like a man who'd already made up his mind. Subscribe if you're new here. This one's been a long time coming. My mom got in my face and yelled, "Either pay the mortgage or get out." She said it in front of about 40 people at Thanksgiving. My sister-in-law mocked, "Let's see how you survive." I packed my things, went. My name is Nate. I'm 33 years old. I'm a chiropractor with a small practice that smells like eucalyptus, and whatever Tiger Balm knockoff I buy in bulk, because my patients love it, and it costs about a third of the name brand. The room is nothing special. Decent equipment, certificates on the wall, a waiting area with chairs that are more comfortable than they look. I built every piece of it over about 6 years, one walk-in appointment and one weekend wellness fair at a time. I tell you that because it matters more than it's going to seem like it does when I start describing what happened at Thanksgiving. The drive over was 15 minutes. I'd made the pie the night before. Wednesday. Wait, no, it was Tuesday. Doesn't matter. The point is, I was already feeling the usual tightness in my chest before I even hit the highway, which is a feeling anyone with a complicated family will recognize without me needing to spell it out. My body had developed its own early warning system for these gatherings. Some kind of internal alarm that activated a few miles out, like a radar that only picks up social situations I'm not going to enjoy. I parked 2 blocks from my brother Brandon's house because his street was already stacked bumper to bumper. Cold wind coming off the open lots, the kind that finds the gap in your collar and stays there. I was carrying the pie, 2 bottles of seltzer, and that familiar knot that lived in my chest every time I went to a family event. Brandon's place is a decent-sized split level in the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows everyone's business and maintains the polite fiction that they don't. His wife Leah had put a wreath on the door. The rest of the decorations were scattered across the porch in a way that looked more like effort than taste. There were close to 40 people inside. Football going on the TV, some game I couldn't tell you anything about because I don't follow that team. Someone's baby fussing upstairs, foil crackling in the kitchen, somebody's cousin arguing about parking in the hallway. A woman I vaguely recognized from church had taken over one of the card tables with a 3-layer dessert she was clearly very proud of. 2 kids were trying to slide in their socks on the hardwood near the dining room while an aunt told them to stop in a tone that meant she'd already given up. Normal chaos. I kissed my nephew on the top of the head, nodded at my dad across the room. He gave me the chin lift, which was his version of a warm greeting, and had barely cleared the doorway before my mom spoke. She didn't even turn around from the sweet potatoes. "Nate," she said my name like a timer going off. I set the pie down on the counter. "Hey, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving. The mortgage is due next week. I want to be clear. It wasn't the ask itself that stopped me. I'd heard some version of that sentence more times than I can honestly count, in more settings than I'd like to think about. What froze me was the location. Not a phone call, not a quiet side room, not even a corner of the kitchen where there'd at least be some plausible deniability. Right there, front and center, with the living room full behind me and the whole house listening. I said we'd already talked about it and that I was tapped out this month. Simple, calm, true. And the room just stopped. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. All 40 people, cousins I barely recognized, the neighbors from down the block, 2 church ladies, the pastor himself, kids who'd been mid-sprint between the chairs, all of them looking at me now. My mom turned slowly away from the stove. Her face had already shifted into that locked expression she gets when she's decided something is going to happen on her timeline, whether anyone cooperates or not. "Either pay the mortgage," she said clearly, "or get out." It landed like something physical, clean and loud and designed to sting in front of an audience. From the couch, Leah, Brandon's wife, lifted her cup and smiled. "Let's see how you survive, Nate." Brandon wouldn't look at me. My dad did that thing he always does when things go sideways. One slow shoulder roll, like if he stayed relaxed enough, the whole situation might just float past him. My own voice came out quieter than I expected. You're doing this right here? In front of everyone? Mom stepped closer. Close enough I could smell her perfume. Powdery, expensive, familiar in the worst way. I'm done being quiet about it. We carried you when you were starting out. You pay what this family is owed or don't come back. She called my practice a bone-cracking hobby. Said it out loud, to the room, in front of the pastor. I laughed once, just once. The kind of laugh that comes out when the humiliation is too big to process quietly. Leah started a slow clap from the couch. My hands were shaking, so I pressed them flat against the counter to keep anyone from seeing it. Somewhere behind me, a toddler hiccuped, and that tiny, completely random sound made the silence feel twice as thick. Okay, I said. Message received. I picked up my coat. I grabbed my seltzer because I'd paid for it. I left the pie on the counter. I made it, and I was not giving them the satisfaction. I walked past the folding chairs and the casserole dishes and the green beans already going cold and all the people who only knew this family from Christmas cards and church smiles, and I walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't make a speech. I didn't give them the scene they were clearly waiting for me to deliver. I got in my car, closed the door, put my forehead on the steering wheel. The street outside was quiet except for some kids a few houses down running through a yard. I could hear the football game faintly through Brandon's closed front door. I sat there for probably 2 or 3 minutes, just breathing. My coat was still on. The pie was still in there on the counter. I'd left it on purpose, and part of me was already second-guessing whether that was petty or whether it was exactly the right call. I landed on the right call. I made that pie, and they could eat it or not. And something in me, something I'd been running on empty for a long time, something that had said yes and held the line and written hopeful dates in spreadsheet columns and told itself it was temporary, finally just quit. Not in a dramatic way, not like a snapped wire or a breaking point in a movie, more like a machine that's been running too long finally deciding it's done with the shift. A quiet shutdown. That was what it felt like. Hold on, let me jump in real quick. For the listeners, this is me, not Nate. I need to highlight one specific thing. She called his licensed medical practice a bone-cracking hobby. In front of the pastor. In front of 40 people. This man went to school for years, built a clinic from scratch, learned insurance billing at 2 in the morning, and the person who raised him waited for the most crowded room possible to describe his career like it was a weird weekend habit. That's not a mom moment. That's a final boss cutscene. And Nate's response? He grabbed his seltzer and walked out like the meeting was already over. I love this guy. Buckle up. Because here's the thing about becoming the family bank. And I want to be honest about how it actually happens. Because it's never one big moment you can point to and say, that's where I went wrong. It's 100 small ones, spread out over years, each one reasonable enough on its own to justify saying yes. It started when I was 28, fresh off my second year running the practice on my own. My parents' electric bill came up short, just until Friday, they said. Friday came and went. I didn't say anything because it was $60, and I wasn't about to make an issue out of $60 with people I loved. Then Brandon's car died. He needed it for work, so I covered the repair. $800, no big deal. He said he'd get me back. He didn't, but I didn't push it, because he was my brother, and it felt small at the time. Then my dad's truck needed winter tires before the roads turned. Then Mom had a dental crown that insurance wouldn't touch. Then a prescription she couldn't skip. Then school supplies for the kids at the start of the school year. Then groceries when the month ran long and someone's paycheck came in short, which started happening more regularly than it probably should have. Then the fridge finally died, and I bought them a new one and called it a gift, because that's what I told myself it was. A gift, not a loan, not evidence of anything, just a son doing something nice. Then the language around these things started shifting, so slow I almost didn't catch it. Just this once became standard. Don't make it weird meant don't bring it up again. Family helps family was the answer to every question I hadn't asked out loud yet. And I said yes every single time, because I genuinely believed that love was something you measured in what you were willing to sacrifice. I'd grown up watching my mom hold things together, with willpower and guilt, and I'd internalized that model somewhere along the way without ever deciding to. Back then, I was splitting my time between 2 clinic locations, one inside a gym, one in a strip mall room with beige walls and lighting that made everyone look slightly unwell. I packed my lunch every day, I learned insurance billing codes at 2 in the morning. I said yes to every walk-in, every wellness fair, every warehouse worker or line cook who couldn't afford to miss a shift but needed to move without wincing. I was proud of what I was building. I was doing it piece by piece, and I loved that about it, genuinely. And while I did that, my family quietly figured out how much weight I could carry before I started to slow down. I made a spreadsheet at some point, named it Family Loans, and put hopeful repayment dates in a column next to each amount, like I was running a small credit operation with people who meant well. Most of those dates eventually became blank cells. The date would pass, nothing would come, and I'd leave the cell empty because writing unpaid felt too final for something I kept telling myself was temporary. Mom became the rotating manager of my guilt. She never asked how the clinic was doing, or whether I was tired, or what I was building toward. She asked, "What can you do this month?" And if I hesitated for even a second, she had the same lines ready. "We supported you when you had nothing. Family helps family. Your brother has kids." My dad stayed quiet through all of it. He had a whole philosophy of non-involvement that he dressed up as peace and calm, but it was really just cowardice that had been perfecting its posture for years. Brandon wasn't always like this. That's the honest part I can't skip over. When we were kids, he was my person. Split food with me under the table at dinners. Covered for me when I broke things. Had my back without being asked. But adulthood hit him like rust. Slow at first, then faster. He got tired, then dependent, then too ashamed about the dependency to do anything about it. And shame makes people surprisingly easy to manage once someone figures out where the lever is. Leah figured that out early. Leah communicated mainly through momentum and energy. She sent voice memos about manifestation and abundance. She pitched dropshipping ventures, reseller networks, brand partnerships, and consulting in fields she'd invented the previous month. One week it was a curated candle subscription. The next it was reselling imported goods. The week after that, it was a wellness brand that needed my professional credibility to land a licensing deal. She once told me straight out that my chiropractic license was a strong image asset. She wanted to attach it to one of her ventures to make it look more credible to investors. I declined, and she spent about 2 weeks treating that refusal like a personal betrayal. When I suggested sitting down and actually looking at their real budget, I became the problem. I printed worksheets one time, actual budget templates with repayment columns and realistic monthly breakdowns. Leah laughed and called me professor. My mom told me I was being condescending. Numbers were apparently a form of cruelty when applied to people who had stronger opinions than income. The family group chat was its own little ecosystem. 23 people, baby pictures, recipes, memes about gratitude and timing, and God's plan. And then, always eventually, the ask. Mom's short this month. Brandon just until payday. Leah, it's literally temporary. Then me, how much? Then Leah, 2,000 would honestly save us right now? Then me, I can't do 2,000 right now. Then Mom, wow, one word, just one. No follow-up, no explanation, nothing else attached. Just, wow, sitting there in the chat like a loaded weapon pointed directly at my stomach. She never sent anything else after it. She'd just drop that word and go quiet, and the rest of the chat would go quiet too, and I'd be left sitting there with my phone in my hand, feeling like I'd done something wrong by trying to hold a line. That syllable used to completely undo me for the rest of the day. I'd go back to work and try to focus on patient charts while that single word ran on a loop in my head. I got pretty good at telling myself it wasn't manipulation. It took me a few years longer than it should have to admit that it definitely was. Last spring, Leah asked for $5,000 to bridge them until a contract closed. She sent an actual PDF, arrows, bullet points, a full section using the word synergy, without any apparent awareness of how that lands. Brandon said they'd be evicted if I didn't come through. Mom said I was their only real option. Dad said nothing, because of course he did. I transferred the money. About a month later, Leah posted on social media standing in front of a rented luxury SUV. Filters on, caption about the grind, never stopping. I remember staring at that photo for a full minute, genuinely trying to figure out whether I was more impressed by the timing or just the raw confidence of it. The answer was both, equally. That was the first time I felt stupid in a way that didn't just sting. It burned right through me and left something permanent behind. By May, I started saying no in smaller ways. Not this week. Payroll's tight. I can't cover that one. Every refusal made them less friendly. Mom called me selfish. Leah called me fragile. Some aunt I barely see called the clinic to ask if I was still doing that spine thing. Anyway, Thanksgiving came, and Mom decided to make a public example out of me in front of the whole crowd. That night, after I drove away from Brandon's house, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off and let the group chat explode without touching my phone. I could feel it buzzing across the table like something trapped under glass. Long bursts of it, then silence, then more buzzing. I didn't open any of it. At 2:13 in the morning, I got up. I went to my file cabinet and pulled everything I had. Bank statements, transfer records, Venmo screenshots, receipts I'd filed without totally knowing why at the time, and the spreadsheet. I printed until the stack was close to an inch thick. Then, I sat down at the kitchen table, still in my coat, I realized, and went through every page. I added dates, added notes, color-coded by category. Brandon's car, no repayment. The dental crown, no repayment. Emergency mortgage payment I'd wired on a Friday afternoon because they'd called me at lunch and said the bank was sending a notice. Partial repayment, $300 total, which was about what the wire fee had cost me anyway. The property tax I'd covered to stop a lien from going through. The appliances I'd bought that later got described in family conversations as Nate helped out, like I'd done them a favor by paying for their kitchen equipment. I found 2 charges I hadn't even noticed at the time. One for just under $200, one for $90, both attached to my clinic card with no explanation I could figure out. I highlighted those separately. At the top of the stack, in black ink, big and clear, I wrote the total. $72,480. That's not counting groceries, not counting gas, not counting whatever had crept onto my clinic card over the years, in the kind of way you catch eventually, but not immediately. Not counting the birthday presents I'd sent for nieces and nephews, so there'd be something from me under the tree without anyone asking. Just the documented transfers, the receipts I had, the things I could prove. By 3:41 in the morning, the full picture was spread across my kitchen table like a map of somewhere I should have stopped going a long time ago. I opened the Notes app and typed one sentence. I love you. I'm done being your bank. I read it back. Just sat there for a minute in the quiet kitchen. That was the most honest thing I'd written in years. Pause for a second. $72,480. Not counting groceries. Not counting gas. Not counting whatever charges slipped onto his clinic card, like they had somewhere to be. And the whole time, every time he tried to slow down, his mom came back with, wow. One word. No punctuation, no follow-up. Just that syllable deployed like a precision instrument that she'd been sharpening for years. That's not communication. That's psychological judo from someone who'd been practicing since he was a kid. This man sat alone at 3 in the morning, doing forensic accounting on his own family. The spreadsheet doesn't lie, though, and he's bringing it in the morning. Morning came gray and flat, like the sky hadn't made a decision yet. I slept maybe 3 hours, not real sleep, just drifting in and out with numbers moving behind my eyes. Every time I got close to actually going under, something would surface. A repayment date that had turned into a blank cell. The Venmo notification I'd gotten the day after I covered the property tax, which wasn't a payment back, just Leah sending me a link to something she wanted me to look at. The image of my mom's face when she said bone-cracking hobby and didn't flinch. The alarm went off and I shut it down before it finished its first buzz. I made coffee strong enough to be considered an act of aggression, got dressed, stacked the papers into a folder, and sat at my kitchen table for a few minutes before I left. I wasn't nervous exactly. Nervous is what you feel when you're not sure what you're going to do. I knew what I was going to do. I'd known since about 3 in the morning. What I felt was more like the specific kind of tired that comes when you've been holding something heavy for a long time, and you're finally about to set it down for good. I drove back to Brandon's house. The neighborhood looked different in daylight, deflated somehow. The Thanksgiving decorations from the night before were already coming down. Plastic pumpkins tilted sideways, balloons losing their shape in the cold, paper plates and foil pans stacked in trash bags at the curb. Like the house had quietly agreed that last night needed to be cleaned up and buried as fast as possible. I knocked. The door was already unlocked. Leah was on the couch with a blanket and her phone. Brandon was in the kitchen standing in front of the open fridge with his arms hanging, the way people stand when they're looking at something that isn't going to give them what they need. Mom was already there, She turned when I walked in and folded her arms immediately. Oh, good. He came to his senses. I didn't answer. I walked past all of them and set the folder down on the kitchen table, pulled the stack out and let it land. The sound it made was louder than I'd expected in that quiet kitchen. A flat, solid thud that made Leah look up from her phone. What's all that? 5 years, I said. Mom picked up the top page and squinted at it. What is this supposed to be? Records. Brandon came closer slowly, from the doorway. The way you approach something you already suspect you don't want to see, but you're going to look at anyway. Records of what? Everything I've paid for. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Leah laughed. Not nervous, not confused, but that full dismissive laugh from someone who's decided the situation is beneath them. Nate, you kept receipts? That's honestly a little weird. I didn't react to that. Mom was flipping through pages faster now, paper snapping between her fingers, like she was trying to outread the numbers. What is this figure at the top? $72,480. Her eyebrows went up. Don't be dramatic. I'm not. Brandon leaned over the stack and started going through it slowly, page by page. I watched his face while he did it. There was a moment, I could pinpoint it pretty exactly, where something clicked behind his eyes. Recognition coming in pieces, the car, the dental bill, the emergency mortgage payment, the tax lien, the fridge, the groceries stretching over years. All those just until Fridays that had kept cycling back around. I could see him doing the same thing I'd done at 3 a.m, trying to add it up in his head, realizing it was bigger than he'd been letting himself think about. His jaw moved a little. His expression shifted from blank to something quieter and harder to read. He set the page down carefully. Didn't throw it, didn't push it away. Just set it down. Nate, he said. Just my name, nothing after it. That's what I've paid to keep this family from going under. I'm not here asking for it back. I just want us all looking at the same reality for once. I pulled a single page from the stack and slid it across the table. Brandon frowned at it. What is this? It was a list. Short and plain. No more loans. No co-signing on anything. No covering bills temporary or otherwise. No access to my credit accounts. No charges running through my clinic card. I'd kept it to one page because I didn't want any room for reinterpretation later. Mom's voice went cold. You're abandoning your family. No, I'm stopping a system that has been draining me for 5 straight years. That's not how family works. This is how it worked for me, I said. I have the dates and the amounts to prove it. Leah scoffed from the couch. You're overreacting. I leaned forward slightly. The BMW you're leasing has 3 missed payments. The room went completely still. Leah's head snapped toward me. Excuse me? It's in Brandon's name, I said, keeping my voice level. The lender has already sent 2 warning notices. The autopay was connected to my credit card. I found it when I was going through everything last night. Mom turned and looked at Brandon. He didn't say anything. His face had gone pale in the way that means a person is doing fast, quiet math and coming up with bad results. Leah stood up, the blanket sliding off the couch. You went through our finances? No, I went through mine, and found yours in there. That landed. She didn't have a line ready for that one. I pointed back to the list on the table. If you want my help going forward, it won't be money. It'll be a real plan. Cancel the BMW. Sell whatever can turn into cash. Cut every subscription that isn't critical. Call the mortgage company about forbearance. They'd rather work with you than foreclose. That's just how it works. These are real options that exist right now. Leah crossed her arms. And what's Brandon supposed to do in the meantime? Get another job. Her laugh was short. He has a job. Not one that covers the mortgage by itself. Mom slammed one hand flat on the table, the stack of papers jumping. We are not laborers. I nodded once. Then you'll be tenants. Nobody moved. Leah looked at me the way you look at someone when you realize the script you've been running on isn't working anymore. You think you're better than us? No. I think reality exists whether we look at it or not. That's not a judgment. It's just true. Brandon rubbed his face with both hands, slow. He looked tired in the deep kind of way that doesn't come from one bad week. "What do you want from us?" He said it quietly. Nothing. That word landed differently than anything else I'd said. Not angry, just final. Mom narrowed her eyes. Nothing. Not anymore. I picked up my coat. Brandon looked up from the table. "Where are you going?" I paused at the door. "Just for a second." "My house." Mom blinked. "Your what?" I pushed the door open. Cold air came in fast and loud. "I bought it last week. I wanted one thing in my life that wasn't a group project." Behind me, I heard Leah say something under her breath. Mom's voice started rising again. Something about how I thought I was better than everyone. Something about how I'd regret this. Something that I'd heard variations of enough times that I didn't need to hear the rest of it. Brandon didn't say anything. I don't know what his face looked like in that moment because I didn't turn around to check. I stepped off the porch. The wind was already doing its thing, rattling through the bare tree branches over the driveway. I got in my car, started it, and pulled away from the curb. And for the first time in 5 years, I drove somewhere that only had my name attached to it. Okay, time out. I need everyone to slow down and appreciate what just happened in that kitchen. He walked in with a $72,000 receipt, dismantled every argument before it could start, revealed he'd been unknowingly auto-funding a luxury car for a woman who was posting prosperity content from the front seat, and then on his way out the door mentioned, completely casually, that he owns a house. Not a studio, an actual house. Purchased last week. Told nobody. This man didn't just set a boundary. He showed up to the finale with documentation, an itemized list, and property deeds. That's not a conversation. That's an exit interview with exhibits attached. Ocean's 11 had a less organized plan. The fallout came fast and from multiple directions. Mom started calling from numbers I didn't recognize, cycling through phones every couple of days. The message was always the same rotation. "You're punishing your family. Family is forever. You'll regret this. How could you do this to us?" I listened to maybe the first two, and then stopped saving them. Leah sent a string of voice memos about a new opportunity that was different from the others, locked in this time, asking me to just help one more time. I saved every single one of those in a folder on my phone I labeled evidence. Some relatives posted vague things online about ungrateful younger generations and people who forget where they came from. I scrolled right past them. 3 days after the confrontation, Mom walked into my clinic. She stood in the doorway and looked around the space slowly. The kind of look where someone is trying hard to be unimpressed and the room isn't cooperating. Clean equipment, real size, the certificates on the wall, the eucalyptus smell. She walked in a few steps and ran a finger lightly across the edge of the front desk, which I clocked but didn't react to. She pressed her lips together. "Nice place," she said finally. "Must have been built on family sacrifice." I set down the patient chart in my hands. "It was built on work." She lowered her voice like we were negotiating something. "You embarrassed me. You told me to pay or disappear, in front of 40 people, including the pastor." I was under pressure. "So was I said. "For 5 years. She didn't answer right away. Something in her face shifted after a moment. Not an apology, nothing that clean. More like a retreat from whatever front she'd been maintaining since Thanksgiving. She said quietly, almost more to herself than to me, "We can't lose that house." Then make real cuts. Cancel the BMW. Downgrade the phones. Brandon picks up more work. Those options are all right there. She started in on Leah, and I shook my head. "I'm not talking about Leah. I'm talking about your son and what he can actually control." She stood there for a long moment with nothing left to reach for. Eventually she said, almost under her breath, "We believed in you when you were nobody." I took a slow breath. And I paid that back, $72,000 worth, with dates and receipts. My next patient was in the waiting room. I walked over to the clinic door and held it open. "You can stay if you want to talk like adults." I met her eyes. "But your bank is closed." She left. Final update. It's been a few weeks since Thanksgiving. Mom stopped calling from random numbers at some point. Either she ran out of new ones or she figured out I wasn't picking up either way. I don't know which one. Brandon texted me about a week after everything. No drama attached to it, no ask hidden inside. Just said he was looking into picking up extra shifts at a second job somewhere. That was all. I sat with that text for a while before I put the phone down. I still haven't responded, which probably says something about where I'm at with all of it. That thread is just sitting there. I'll figure out what to say eventually. Leah's still in the group chat. I muted it the morning after Thanksgiving and haven't unmuted it. My house has 2 bedrooms and a crooked fence out front and a maple tree in the yard that drops leaves like it's being paid per leaf every time the wind picks up. The kitchen needs paint. I can see where the previous owner patched something badly near the window and didn't fully commit to finishing it. There's a scratch on the hardwood floor near the back door that I keep meaning to fix. The light above the stove hums at night when the heat kicks on, which took me about 3 nights to stop noticing. I slept on an air mattress the first week, drank coffee from paper cups, sat on the floor and wrote my monthly budget on the back of an envelope. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, payroll, taxes, savings. Family, $0. At first, that number looked wrong every time I looked at the page. It still stings a little if I'm being completely straight with you. Part of me is still the guy who said yes every time because he thought that's what love looked like. But it feels right in a way I can't argue with at 6 in the morning when the house is quiet and the coffee is strong, and the only name on the deed is mine. That's enough for right now. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments. Look, Nate wasn't playing a perfect game his whole life. He said yes when he should have said no, kept a spreadsheet of loans that were never coming back like he was eventually going to invoice his own family, and let it go on for 5 years. But when someone backs you into a corner in front of 40 people and tells you to pay up or get out, you don't argue that. You don't beg. You go home, you print the receipts, and you come back the next morning with your facts in order and your bags already packed. That's not petty, that's just being done for real. Drop your take in the comments, and if you're not subscribed yet, hit the button. Next story's already waiting.